Armenians have gone to the polls in early parliamentary elections. And also, France has gone to the polls on Sunday for the first round of regional elections. A national march has begun in Peru to support the presidential candidate, Pedro Castillo. Hello and welcome to teleSUR. I'm José Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. Armenians have gone to the polls in early parliamentary elections, expected to heal divisions in the Asian country after a disastrous war with Azerbaijan. Elections were called by incumbent President Nikol Pashinyan following protests over the country's defeat in a war with Azerbaijan last year. Around 2.6 million people are eligible to vote parliament members under a proportional electoral system. A winning party needs to obtain at least 50% of seats plus one and can be assigned additional seats in order to form a government.
Everyone has their opinion. I hope people will not conflict. If they care about the country, they have to accept facts. If people will elect someone, this someone has to be able to govern the country. We hope there will be not fraud.
And also, France has gone to the polls on Sunday for the first round of regional elections. About 48 million people will elect new assemblies for France's 13 regions and 96 departments. The voting will be held over 2 consecutive Sundays, with a second round set for June 27, unless parties win more than 50% in the first round. A possible record abstention rate of up to 60% is also seen as a major factor in this election.
I think that there will be a lot of abstention, but I would say that it's a pity for the people who won't go to vote, because we have a possibility. It's a democratic moment. I think that we must express ourselves. It's now or never. You cannot wake up tomorrow with a hangover and say, damn it.
I have the impression that politics always stagnates at the same level, whatever the party, so there you go. We'd like a bit of freshness in all this. I'm going to vote, but I'll certainly vote blank again this year, also to show discontent we can have.
Iran's current judiciary chief, Ebrahim Raisi, has won the country's presidential election in a vote marked by a low turnout and calls for a boycott. By noon local time on Saturday, the long-serving conservative judge had won 62% of the votes, according to preliminary results released by the National Electoral Commission. With about 90% of the votes counted, Raisi had won 17.8 million votes, as reported by the head of Iran's Interior Ministry election headquarters, Jamal Orf. Raisi's rivals conceded defeat before even the final results were released.
Mr. Ebrahim Raisi took the first spot after winning 17,926,345 votes and was elected by the people's president, a trustee for the executive branch. Mr. Mohsen Razaen Mirgaer won 3,412,712 votes. Mr. Abdolnasser Emati won 2,427,201 votes. And Mr. Amir Sohain Ghazizadeh Hashemi won 999,718 votes. The rest of the votes are considered voided ballots, which are around 3,726,870 votes.
Iranians have expressed hope for the country's new president. They are confident he will be able to improve the country's economic performance. The president-elect Ebrahim Raisi has pledged to improve Iranians' livelihoods and to bring the Iranian economy back on the right track. Analysts attribute Raisi's victory to his call for plans to improve the economy, which has been seriously affected by UN sanctions and the COVID-19 pandemic.
Currently, the main issue for people inside Iran is the economy. So many did not vote this year because they felt neither a reformist or a moderate president has been able to improve the economy of a country which is among the 15 mineral-rich countries in the world with huge oil and natural gas reserves, in fact. Now the Iranians hope Raisi, who is aligned with the main sources of power in Iran, could move the economy towards the right track.
4 people have been killed and 15 injured after a plane carrying skydivers crashed in Russia's Kemerovo region. According to authorities, the incident occurred near Tanai airfield at around 10 a.m. local time, where a twin-engine L-140 plane carrying 19 people broke apart after a hard landing, and 4 of the injured are in severe conditions. The reason behind the crash is being investigated, Kemerovo authorities said in a statement. Russian President Vladimir Putin has pledged to prioritize growing the country's economy ahead of September parliamentary polls. Speaking during the ongoing ruling United Russia Party Congress, Putin said his government is set to spend millions of dollars on public transport, roads, infrastructure, and healthcare. He also said the state will be allocating payments and new forms of support for families starting next month. The Congress will determine the ruling party's candidates and electoral program for the lower house ahead of upcoming elections.
Мы с вами знаем, но чтобы переломить негативные тенденции, нам нужно сфокусировать на этой цели все наши усилия по развитию экономики.
We must concentrate on all our efforts on this objective of developing the economy and the regions, the social field, health, education, on the strengthening of traditional values, understanding that the future in Russia is prosperous, family with children.
West African states have announced a roadmap to monitor the situation in Mali after the coup before considering lifting its suspension from the regional bloc. Addressing the media during the Economic Community of West African States meeting in Ghana, the president of the bloc's commission, Jean-Claude Bro, said although there is progress in Mali after the coup, there is still need to monitor how the peace and democratic process is being implemented. The 15-member bloc suspended Mali's membership following the second coup carried out by the army last month.
When you look at the situation, there are positive developments, but at the same time, the head of state indicated that those positive developments, we need to follow that. We need to continue to monitor this development in terms of how they are implementing the order decision of the roadmap determined by the head of state. So, at this stage, while they saw positive development, they thought that due to the fact that they want to see how firm is progress being made, the suspension is still maintained.
Political parties in Ethiopia are winding up campaigning for next week's presidential elections. The elections, which have been postponed twice, will mark the first test of voter support for Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Africa's youngest leader and Ethiopia's first leader from the Oromia region. About 37 million Ethiopians have registered to vote on Monday, although many will have to wait until the second poll phase is scheduled for September due to logistical, legal, and security-related problems.
It is a special opportunity to elect our leaders, so we should vote with our cards and accept the election results peacefully. Every Ethiopian should participate in the election and accept the election results. That is what we all are praying for today.
And public officials in Amhara, northern Ethiopia, prepared electoral materials and began setting up polling stations ahead of the country's general elections. The elections were delayed almost a year due to the coronavirus pandemic and rescheduled for June 5th. However, the timetable fell behind and a new date was scheduled for June 21st. Africa's second most populous nation has been rocked by violence, particularly in the war-torn region of Tigray. The World Health Organization has declared an end to a second Ebola outbreak in Guinea. The organization officially announced the end of Guinea's second infectious virus outbreak, which was detected in February. Only 16 Ebola cases have been recorded and 12 people have died from it since the start of the second wave. The small number of casualties and infections have been attributed to the experience from the 2013-16 epidemic, which killed more than 11,300 people, mostly in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone.
It has been 42 days, twice the incubation period for Ebola, since the last confirmed case of Ebola, which had been missed on follow-up was considered to have zero risk of transmission in the community.
We are all happy. I'm happy to solemnly declare on behalf of the President the end of the resurgence of Ebola in Guinea.
And we have more news in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. Supporters of the Peru Libre Party have demonstrated in Capital Lima in the so-called National March in defense of presidential candidate Pedro Castillo. On June 6, Castillo faced up against Keiko Fujimori from the Fuerza Popular Party in the second round of the presidential election. And according to the National Office of Electoral Processes, on the official results, Pedro Castillo received 50.125% of the votes and Fujimori received 49.875%. However, no winner has been declared so far. The body in charge of announcing the elected president said it's still reviewing the ballots amid allegations of voting irregularities.
Unfortunately, Mrs. Keiko Fujimori is a corrupt woman who should not be president and should accept her defeat because what won here is the democracy, the fair vote of the people.
Here we are, the people from all regions, to protest against Keiko Fujimori, who has not even reached the 49% of the vote. That's the truth. As you see, we are here from all the 24 Peruvian regions, protesting against Keiko and against the electoral jury that has not yet proclaimed teacher Pedro Castillo Terrones as president of the country.
Meanwhile, the interim-president of Peru, Francisco Sagasti, has condemned a call from retired soldiers of the armed forces to prevent the presidential candidate Pedro Castillo from eventually being proclaimed as the winner of the June 6 runoff vote. Fears of a possible coup and calls for another election have emerged as losing candidate Keiko Fujimori continues to claim fraud.
What is unacceptable is that a group of retired people from the armed forces intends to incite the high command of the Army, Navy and Air Force to break the rule of law. Yesterday, letters with only one signature and a list of names were presented to the General Commands of the Armed Forces and directed to the General Commanders and the head of the Joint Command of the Armed Forces, asking that they act against the Constitution and laws. As Constitutional President of the Republic, I reject this type of communication, which are not only contrary to democratic values and institutional framework, but are also acts at odds with the Constitution and the laws.
Still in Peru, at least 27 people have been killed and several injured when a bus fell into an abyss on an Andean road. A bus carrying miners fell into a cliff near the famous Nazca lines in the Ayacucho region. This is the second deadly accident to happen on the same road in the last 10 days. According to Peruvian media reports, the bus fell into a 450-meter abyss and bodies were scattered on the slopes of a hill in the desert area. Accidents have been happening in this area and have been attributed to poor road conditions, speeding, and lack of signaling.
The procedure is to be able to bring all the bodies to this area, order them, take them to the Puquio morgue, and mainly do the respective tests, alcohol levels, and all those tests on the driver.
Hundreds of demonstrators rallied in the streets of Rio de Janeiro on Saturday, calling for the resignation of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. Activists critical of Bolsonaro's handling of the coronavirus pandemic had called for a nationwide protest across 300 Brazilian cities. Brazil's Senate is investigating how the coronavirus death toll got so high, focusing on why Bolsonaro's far-right government ignored opportunities to buy vaccines for months. According to health authorities, the COVID-19 casualties have surpassed 500,000, the second highest in the world behind the United States. The demonstrations were also against his economic policies. They say harmed the interests of the poor and working class.
The fact that we are here all against Bolsonaro. We are not waiting for the next election. We want to remove him now. He's not good for one more minute in power. What comes next will certainly be much better than Bolsonaro. Opposition to the Bolsonaro government is extremely important. We are here not to die. The COVID-19 virus is less dangerous than this genocidal president.
The European Union's Special Envoy for Peace in Colombia has expressed the bloc's concern regarding the death of demonstrators during the national strike protest. European official Eamon Gilmore met with President Ivan Duque to express concern regarding the violent acts of the security forces and reiterated his commitment to ensure accountability for the serious abuses and human rights violations. Activists and NGOs have collected data on over 70 deaths, the majority of which are at the hands of the security forces. A new death was reported in the city of Cali precisely during Gilmore's visit.
I spoke to the president about the concern we have in Europe surrounding the death of demonstrators, and the president reiterated his commitment to ensure accountability and that the applicable reforms be implemented, and these issues will be addressed, and that everything triggering the demonstrations will be addressed. And we also spoke about the need and willingness to have a dialogue at the national, regional, and local levels.
A 4-day summit for vaccine internationalism, sponsored by the Progressive International, has begun this Friday. The meeting is held virtually and its goal is securing COVID-19 vaccines for all countries around the world. The summit brings together governments from the global south, political leaders, health workers, and vaccine manufacturers from more than 20 countries. During this summit, the foreign ministers of Bolivia and Venezuela and the head of ALBA bloc denounced the negative role of patents as an example of a flawed international economic order.
And the reflection process to which the search for vaccines has led us. We have noticed that at the moment there is not enough production capacity in the world to supply all those who need vaccines in a reasonable time. According to experts, we need to immunize 70% of the world's population to get out of the pandemic. And that is difficult when they are only produced by certain companies, because the vaccines have patents. There are other companies, public or private, that can produce them, but they can't do it because they don't have the licenses. We consider that COVID-19 exposed and laid bare the capitalist system, the model that was imposed, and it is the responsibility of those of us who are like-minded to be able to build that world, which is not only possible, of course it is possible, but it is essential, because neither Mother Earth nor humanity will be able to stand much longer this system that we laid bare, as we called it. Fortunately, in Venezuela, 98% of coronavirus cases have been treated in the public sector. We have coordinated well with the private sector, and of that total, 92% of the cases have recovered.
The head of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America stressed that the pandemic has underlined the health threats posed by neoliberalism.
The pandemic has undoubtedly exposed the way in which the neoliberal model works. The capitalist system, which accumulates capital, goods, and high-quality services in a handful of countries, and which is inherently incapable of resolving not only the pandemic, but also the global threats that humanity has to face. In a year and a half of pandemic, we have seen how not only the distribution of vaccines, but also of other goods to attend the pandemic have been subordinated and controlled by the neoliberal logic, and we have seen in a tangible way how this has taken its toll on human lives in different parts of the world.
And we have more stories coming up after one last break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. Cuba has developed 5 COVID-19 vaccines candidates despite the huge limitations that the U.S. blockade imposes on the country. Over 2 million Cubans have already received jabs in the midst of the sanctions. The vaccination campaign began on May 12 in different cities across the island, with over 4 million doses now administered. The 2 most advanced vaccine candidates are Abdala and Soberana 02, which are in the 3rd phase of clinical trials. Cuba expects to announce the final results regarding the efficiency of the candidates as soon as possible, and will request authorization for the emergency use from Health Authority in order to extend the vaccination program to the entire population. The 2021 Copa America football tournament kicked off in Brazil last Sunday, and in less than a week, 65 people have been infected with COVID-19, including players, technical staff, and journalists. Since June 13, when the first match was held, a series of cases of players who tested positive for the virus have emerged. The South American Football Confederation explained that among the positive cases are stadium staff, the referee team, and even representatives of the sports organization itself. In April, China's Sinovac vaccine company donated 50,000 doses to the Confederation, which announced they will be applied to all the national teams and technical personnel. The decision to hold the tournament in Brazil sparked widespread condemnation and protests. A group of protesters have gathered at the venue of Japan's Tokyo Olympic Games to call for the cancellation of the event due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The demonstrators are concerned that the Games can be a hotspot for the spread of the virus, and they demanded the event to be cancelled. The Olympic Games are scheduled to start on July 23rd in Tokyo. However, Japanese residents are skeptical if there are going to be efficient safety measures during the biggest international sporting event, as the pandemic continues spreading in the Asian country. The life of COVID-19 patients in Afghanistan is under threat as the country has run out of oxygen in the midst of a third surge of the pandemic. Officials say the situation has gone out of control, with oxygen manufacturing facilities overwhelmed by an increase in cases. Afghanistan has already received a donation of 900 oxygen cylinders from Iran. A representative of the International Federation of Red Cross has assured that the organization will facilitate for the establishment of an oxygen generation plant into the country.
To save lives, that's the primary immediate need. And to do that, you really need to make sure that they have access to clinical care as soon as possible, especially those who get severe symptoms and need oxygenation. So in that case, oxygen is important, and the supply of oxygen has to be ramped up. A solution has to be found around that.
Thousands of protesters have rallied in the Spanish capital, Madrid, to support Western Sahara's quest for independence from Morocco. Other similar marches were held in other parts of Spain, magnifying the demand for Spain and Morocco to grant autonomy to the region. Morocco annexed the area in the 1970s after Spain's colonial administration ended, and it considers the vast territory as part of the Moroccan kingdom. The situation got worsened last December when the U.S. Trump administration formally recognized Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara in return for Rabat's normalization ties with Israel.
We are Sahrawi, and we want freedom for our country. We want to fight because who doesn't have land doesn't have anything. The Spanish people are 100% supportive. They have always given a warm and nice support to the Sahrawi people for decades now. We hope this becomes a reality for the freedom of the Sahrawi people.
Over 1,000 women from across Turkey have marched in Istanbul, urging President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to reverse his decision to withdraw from an anti-violence treaty. Protesters on Saturday chanted slogans, including "We will stop femicides" and "You will never walk alone," as representatives of women's rights groups delivered speeches. The rally, titled "We Won't Give Up on the Istanbul Convention," arrives ahead of the formalization of Ankara's exit from the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, better known as the Istanbul Convention. Turkey's withdrawal from the convention sparked heavy criticism from Western allies and will be finalized on July 1st, when women across the country are set to hold another protest.
Our hope is always rooted in our struggles, in our organizations. Today, women came from 70 provinces to form our processions. We believe in the strength of our organizations, and whether the decision is overturned or not, we will continue our struggle in every way possible. So far, we have always managed to make them back down, and I think they will have to bend again, because this time, the women are very strong and are acting together. All women are asking for only one thing: that the withdrawal of the Istanbul Convention be annulled and that the convention be applied effectively.
And in Poland, the largest gay pride parade in Central Europe have taken place in the capital Warsaw on Saturday for the first time in 2 years since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. Thousands of people joined the parade and were cheered on by others waving rainbow flags from their apartment balconies. The joyful and colorful celebration was tinged with fear of what the future holds for the rights of gay men, lesbians, bisexuals, and transgender people after setbacks first in Russia and now in Hungary. The parade came days after Hungary's parliament passed a law that makes it illegal to show any materials about LGBT issues to people under 18.
I think that the situation of our LGBT community in Poland has changed for the worse. We are now stigmatized, and it can be seen at every step, in every aspect of life. We are not allowed to live normally. We have no rights in Poland, and yet we are here, and we are a large community in Poland. We came here because in Poland the situation is that there are no rights, and you have to fight for them for yourself, for others, so that you can live a normal life.
And with this story, we come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find this and many other stories as always in our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.